Right then, let's get into it. We often think of survival in terms of big dramatic events, wars, natural disasters, the sort of stuff that makes the headlines. But what if survival is quieter? What if it's the slow, grinding reality of not knowing where your next meal is coming from, or whether the water you're about to drink will make you sick? In huge swathes of Asia, this isn't a hypothetical, it's the everyday. No electricity to light up the night, no shoes to protect your feet from the rough ground, no guarantee of anything really. It's a world away from the one I'm sitting in, and likely the one you are too. It's easy to get lost in the data, the GDP figures, the poverty lines drawn by economists in comfortable offices. But those numbers, they don't tell you the whole story. They don't tell you about the ache of hunger or the weight of a water bucket carried for miles. In these countries, poverty isn't just a statistic. It's a daily battle for the basics we take for granted. It's the gnawing uncertainty that defines life for millions. So today, we're going to peel back the layers. We're going to look past the tourist brochures and the political speeches. We're going to try and understand just a little bit what life is actually like in the 10 poorest countries in Asia. It's not going to be easy, and it's certainly not going to be comfortable, but it's important. Because these aren't just places on a map. They are homes to millions of people whose stories deserve to be heard. It's about seeing the humanity behind the hardship, and maybe, just maybe, recalibrating our own sense of what it means to be alive. Let's begin. Our journey starts in Cambodia, a place that carries its history like a heavy cloak. You can't talk about Cambodia without talking about the Khmer Rouge. The ghosts of that regime still haunt the landscape, not just in the killing fields, but in the deep, systemic poverty that followed. It's a nation of profound contrasts. You land in Phnom Penh, and you see shiny new skyscrapers piercing the skyline, symbols of foreign investment and a burgeoning middle class. You see tourists sipping cocktails on rooftop bars, completely oblivious to the world just a few streets away. It's a strange, almost jarring juxtaposition of worlds. But you don't have to go far to see the other Cambodia. Just beyond the city's glossy veneer, you find the makeshift villages, the shantytowns clinging to the riverbanks. Here, homes are patched together from corrugated iron, plastic sheeting, and whatever else can be scavenged. This is where the real Cambodia lives for so many. Venture out into the countryside, and the struggle becomes even more visceral. This is where the statistics become faces. You see kids full of life and energy, walking for miles down dusty, rutted tracks just to get to a school that might not even have a proper roof. You hear stories of clinics being so few and far between that a simple infection can become a life-threatening ordeal. The roads, often just muddy paths, become impassable during the monsoon season, cutting off entire communities from markets, from help, from the outside world. This isn't a life of grand ambitions, it's a life of daily, gritty survival. It's the quiet resilience that gets you. The farmer, tending his meager rice paddy, the mother trying to keep her children clean with a small basin of murky water, the mechanic fixing a motorbike with worn-out tools. There's a strength here, born of necessity, but it's a strength that shouldn't have to be tested so relentlessly, day in and day out. The legacy of conflict has left deep scars, and for millions in rural Cambodia, the war for a decent life is far from over. They are fighting a battle not with guns, but with sheer will against the crushing weight of poverty. Next, we head to Pakistan, a nation of over 240 million people, a staggering number of whom are trapped in a cycle of poverty. The official figures are grim, suggesting nearly 40% of the population lives in poverty. But on the ground, the reality feels even more acute. It's a country grappling with economic instability, political turmoil, and the devastating impacts of climate change. You see the signs everywhere, from the bustling, chaotic cities to the remote, forgotten villages. It's a story of immense human potential being stifled by immense hardship. Take Karachi, one of the world's largest megacities. Within its sprawling limits lies Orangi Town, often cited as one of Asia's largest slums. It's a city within a city, a labyrinth of narrow, unpaved alleyways, open sewers, and precariously built homes, stacked one on top of the other. Millions of people are crammed into this space, living without reliable access to clean water, sanitation, or electricity. Yet it's a place of incredible industry and community-led initiatives. People aren't just waiting for help. They are organizing, building their own sewage systems and creating small businesses. It's a testament to human resilience, but it's a resilience born from systemic neglect. The struggle in the cities is one of density and lack of services, but in rural Pakistan the challenges are different, often crueler. In regions like Sindh and Balochistan, malnutrition is rampant. We're talking about children with stunted growth, their bodies and minds permanently affected by a lack of food. It's a silent crisis, hidden away from the world's gaze. And then comes the water. The catastrophic floods of recent years have laid bare the country's vulnerability. Entire villages washed away, crops destroyed, livelihoods erased in an instant. Families who had little to begin with were left with absolutely nothing. The floods aren't just a one-time disaster. They are a recurring nightmare that exacerbates the poverty that is already there. They contaminate drinking water, leading to outbreaks of cholera and other diseases. They destroy the very land that people depend on for survival. For a farmer in a remote Pakistani village, life is a constant gamble against the weather, against a failing economy, against a system that seems to have forgotten them. It's a fight on multiple fronts, and it's a fight that millions are losing every single day. The scale of the need is just immense. From Pakistan, our journey takes us to Myanmar, a country whose recent history is a story of hope brutally extinguished. For a brief period, it seemed like Myanmar was on a path to democracy and economic openness. But the military coup in 2021 shattered that dream, plunging the nation into chaos and triggering a catastrophic economic collapse. The progress that had been made, slow and fragile as it was, has been wiped out. Now it's a country where survival itself is a political act. The economic freefall has been swift and devastating. The currency has lost most of its value, sending the price of food and fuel skyrocketing. Ordinary families who were just getting by suddenly find themselves unable to afford basic necessities. In cities like Yangon and Mandalay, the signs of decay are everywhere. The once bustling markets are quieter, the infrastructure is crumbling from neglect, and a sense of fear and uncertainty hangs in the air. Power cuts are constant, plunging neighborhoods into darkness for hours on end, crippling businesses and making daily life a logistical nightmare. And then there's the human cost, which is always the most profound. The plight of the Rohingya people is well documented, a brutal campaign of persecution that has created one of the world's largest refugee crises. But even beyond that specific tragedy, the conflict that has engulfed the country since the coup has displaced millions internally. People have been forced to flee their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs, seeking refuge in makeshift camps or disappearing into the jungle. They are living in a state of constant peril, caught between the military and various resistance groups. For the average person in Myanmar, life has become a tightrope walk. There is no safety net. The healthcare system, already weak, has effectively collapsed. Schools have been closed or have become sites of conflict. Getting through each day is an achievement. It's a story of a nation being dragged back into a dark past, its future stolen. The spirit of the people is incredibly strong. You see it in the quiet acts of defiance and mutual support. But they are up against a regime that has prioritized power over the well-being of its own citizens. And the result is a humanitarian disaster unfolding in slow motion. Nepal. The name itself conjures images of majestic snow-capped peaks, serene temples, and intrepid trekkers on the adventure of a lifetime. It's a country that has built a significant part of its economy on this image, drawing in tourists from all over the world to experience the beauty of the Himalayas. And honestly, that beauty is undeniable. But like so many places we're visiting, there's a starkly different reality that exists just out of frame, in the shadows of those magnificent mountains. The contrast is most visible right in the capital, Kathmandu. You can walk through the tourist hub of Tamil, with its gear shops, guest houses, and restaurants catering to foreigners, and then, just a short distance away, find yourself in a slum clinging to the banks of the Bagmati River. Here, life is a world apart. Homes are makeshift shelters, sanitation is non-existent, and the river itself is a toxic stew of sewage and waste. The people living here are the invisible workforce that keeps the tourist industry running, the porters, the cleaners, the cooks. Yet they are denied the most basic services. This gap between the glossy tourist experience and the lived reality of the poor is a defining feature of Nepal. But to truly understand the depth of the poverty, you have to leave the Kathmandu Valley behind and head into the remote mountain villages. Here, life is incredibly harsh. These are communities that are geographically isolated, cut off from the rest of the country by difficult terrain. There might be one dirt track connecting a village to the nearest town, a track that becomes a treacherous mudslide during the monsoon. In these remote areas, basic services are not just poor, they are often completely absent. A health post might be a day's walk away, and even then, it might be staffed by a single, undertrained worker with few supplies. Schools lack teachers, books, and even proper classrooms. Electricity is a luxury. For the people here, life has changed very little in centuries. They are subsistence farmers, coaxing a meager living from terraced fields carved into the hillsides, their lives dictated by the seasons and the ever-present threat of natural disasters like earthquakes and landslides. Their resilience is immense, but it's a resilience forged in the crucible of extreme hardship. Now we travel to one of Asia's youngest nations, Timor-Leste. After a long and brutal struggle for independence, there was so much hope for this small country. The world watched as it finally broke free in 2002. But the dawn of freedom did not automatically bring prosperity. The reality is that building a nation from scratch, especially one scarred by decades of conflict and neglect, is a monumental task. The hopes of a generation have been met with the harsh realities of deep-seated poverty. Walking through the capital, Dili, you see the legacy of this struggle. While there are some government buildings and new developments, much of the city is made up of shanty towns. Families live in humble homes, often without access to reliable infrastructure. One of the most crippling issues is the cost of electricity. Despite the country having significant offshore oil and gas reserves, the electricity is among the most expensive in the region. For a family earning just a few dollars a day, keeping the lights on is a major financial burden, a luxury they often can't afford. This energy poverty has a ripple effect on everything. It means children can't study at night. It means small businesses can't operate refrigerators or machinery. It stifles development at the most basic level. Beyond the capital, in the rugged, mountainous interior of the country, the situation is even more dire. Here, many communities are almost completely disconnected. The roads are poor, healthcare is scarce, and educational opportunities are severely limited. People rely on subsistence farming, growing what they can on the steep hillsides. The daily hardship is relentless. A Mother's Day might consist of a long trek to fetch water, hours spent tending a small garden, and the constant worry of how to feed her children on an income that is precarious at best. Malnutrition remains a significant problem, stunting the potential of the country's youngest generation. It's a cruel irony that a nation with natural resource wealth has a population that is struggling so profoundly. Timor-Leste is a powerful reminder that political independence is only the first step on a long, arduous road to economic and social justice. The fight for a better life continues every single day. Our journey now takes us to the mountainous heart of Central Asia, to Tajikistan. It's important to acknowledge, right from the off, that this is a country that has made some real progress. Since the end of its devastating civil war in the 90s, Tajikistan has managed to cut its poverty rate significantly. That's a genuine achievement, a testament to the hard work of its people. But statistics can be deceiving. While the overall numbers have improved, deep pockets of poverty persist, particularly in the rural and mountainous areas where the majority of the population lives. The story of Tajikistan is a story of two different worlds. In the capital, Dushanbe, you can see signs of development. New parks, grand government buildings, a sense of forward momentum. But drive just an hour or two out of the city and you enter a different reality. You enter a world of remote villages nestled in high-altitude valleys where life is governed by the harsh seasons and limited resources. This is where the progress seen in the capital feels very, very distant. One of the biggest struggles is energy, especially in winter. The country relies heavily on hydropower, which means that during the cold, dry winter months, electricity is severely rationed in rural areas. Imagine living through a freezing winter with only a few hours of electricity a day. Schools become bitterly cold, making it almost impossible for children to learn. Homes are heated with wood or dung stoves, which carry their own health risks. It's a seasonal hardship that grinds people down year after year. Beyond the cold, the lack of infrastructure creates a constant struggle. Healthcare in these remote regions is basic at best. Accessing a properly equipped hospital can mean a long, difficult journey over poorly maintained mountain roads. Job opportunities are scarce, forcing a huge portion of the male population to migrate to Russia for work, sending remittances back to support their families. This creates entire communities of women, children, and the elderly, left to manage the farms and households on their own. Tajikistan's progress is real, but it's fragile. And for millions in its rural heartlands, the daily battle against poverty is still a long way from being won. We now turn to a country whose name has become, well, pretty much synonymous with conflict and suffering: Syria. Before 2011, Syria was a middle-income country with a rich history and a proud people. The war has changed everything. It has not just caused immense human loss and a refugee crisis of historic proportions, it has systematically dismantled the very fabric of the nation. The poverty we see in Syria today is not the result of gradual economic decline. It is the direct consequence of a brutal, protracted war that has left the country in ruins. The devastation is almost impossible to comprehend. Entire cities like Aleppo and Homs have been reduced to rubble. What were once vibrant urban centers are now landscapes of skeletal, bombed-out buildings. The infrastructure that supports modern life has been obliterated. Power grids, water treatment plants, hospitals, schools, all have been targeted and destroyed. For the millions of Syrians who remain in the country, life is a daily fight for survival in a post-apocalyptic landscape. The impact of international blockades and sanctions, layered on top of the war's destruction, has created a perfect storm of economic collapse. The currency is worthless, and hyperinflation has put even the most basic food items out of reach for most families. People are forced to queue for hours for just a few pieces of bread. Clean water is a luxury, often sourced from contaminated wells or, expensive private cellars. Electricity is available for maybe an hour or two a day, if at all. People burn plastic or scrap wood to stay warm, breathing in toxic fumes. This is a humanitarian catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale. Generations of children have grown up knowing nothing but war. They've been denied an education, proper nutrition, and the basic right to feel safe. The psychological trauma is, honestly, immeasurable. The daily reality for Syrians is not about planning for the future. It's about finding enough food and water to make it through the day. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that people continue to endure. But it is a situation that is utterly unsustainable, and a stain on the conscience of the world. Our journey now takes us to a place of enduring conflict and deep-seated poverty: Palestine. The political situation here is complex and deeply contentious, but the human reality for ordinary Palestinians, particularly in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, is one of daily struggle defined by occupation and blockade. This isn't just about politics. It's about the very real, tangible impact this has on people's ability to live a normal, dignified life. The poverty here is man-made, a direct result of restrictions on movement, trade, and access to resources. In the Gaza Strip, the situation is particularly acute. It's actually one of the most densely populated places on Earth, often described as an open-air prison. A severe blockade imposed for over a decade has crippled the economy. The vast majority of the population is dependent on international aid to survive. Unemployment rates are astronomical, especially among the youth, leaving a generation with little hope for the future. The infrastructure is on the verge of total collapse after repeated conflicts. The lack of basic services is staggering. The water from the tap is undrinkable, contaminated with seawater and sewage. Families have to buy expensive purified water for drinking and cooking. The electricity supply is sporadic, with residents receiving power for only a few hours a day. This affects everything. Hospitals struggle to operate life-saving equipment, businesses cannot function, and daily life is a constant challenge of planning around the power cuts. It's a state of perpetual crisis. In the West Bank, while the conditions are different, the economic hardship is still severe. Checkpoints, roadblocks, and the separation barrier restrict movement, making it difficult for farmers to reach their land and for people to get to jobs or hospitals. The lack of control over their own economy and resources stifles any chance of sustainable development. For ordinary Palestinians, Life is a constant navigation of permits, restrictions, and uncertainty. It's a struggle to maintain hope and dignity in the face of a system that seems designed to crush both. We now arrive in Afghanistan, a country that has endured more than 40 years of near-continuous conflict. From the Soviet invasion to civil war, the Taliban regime, the US-led intervention, and now the return of the Taliban, generations have been born into a state of perpetual instability. This relentless cycle of violence has not only claimed countless lives, but has also systematically destroyed the country's economy and social fabric, leaving it one of the poorest and most fragile states in the world. The consequences of these decades of war are everywhere. The country is littered with the remnants of conflict, both physical and psychological. Millions have been displaced from their homes, forced to flee violence and seek refuge in overcrowded camps or squalid urban slums, where they live in desperate conditions. The infrastructure is shattered. Roads, bridges, and power lines, if they were ever built, have been destroyed or have fallen into disrepair, isolating vast swathes of the country. The absence of essential services is a defining feature of life for most Afghans. The healthcare system is on its knees, completely reliant on foreign aid, which has become precarious. Malnutrition is rampant, with millions, especially children, facing acute hunger. The education system, particularly for girls and women, has been decimated. For so many, the future has been erased, replaced by a daily struggle for the most basic elements of survival: food, water, and shelter. The recent economic collapse following the withdrawal of international forces and the freezing of the country's assets has pushed an already desperate population over the edge. Jobs have vanished, and savings have been wiped out. People are resorting to desperate measures to feed their families, selling their possessions, and even their own children. It is a humanitarian crisis of staggering proportions, unfolding in a country that has already suffered so much. The resilience of the Afghan people is legendary, but there is a limit to what any human being can endure. Our final destination is Yemen, a country experiencing what the United Nations has repeatedly called the world's worst humanitarian crisis. This is not hyperbole. Years of a brutal civil war compounded by foreign intervention have led to a complete and total societal collapse. The level of suffering here is almost beyond words, a catastrophe that has pushed an entire nation to the very brink of existence. Poverty here is not just a lack of money, it's a lack of everything. The statistics are numbing in their scale. An estimated 80% of the population, that's more than 24 million people, are dependent on humanitarian aid to survive. They rely on food distributions from international agencies to keep from starving. Widespread starvation is not a threat, it is a reality. Millions are living in famine-like conditions. We are talking about children dying from hunger and preventable diseases on a scale that is hard to fathom in the 21st century. The war has systematically targeted and destroyed the infrastructure necessary for life. Water and sanitation systems have collapsed, triggering the worst cholera outbreaks in modern history. Hospitals have been bombed, and the few that remain functional lack medicine, equipment, and staff. Electricity is a distant memory for most of the population. The economy has been completely hollowed out, leaving people with no way to earn a living even if there were goods to buy. This is the absolute bottom. It's the culmination of what happens when conflict is allowed to fester, and the international community fails to act decisively. Life for the average Yemeni is a constant desperate search for food, for clean water, for safety from the bombs and the shelling. It is a daily nightmare from which there is no escape. The stories coming out of Yemen are of unimaginable loss and unbearable suffering. It stands as a stark, horrifying testament to the human cost of war and a catastrophic failure of our collective humanity. So there we have it. 10 countries, 10 stories of immense struggle. It's heavy stuff, I know. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel helpless in the face of such widespread hardship. But turning away doesn't make it disappear. The first step towards any kind of change is understanding. It's about bearing witness to these realities, not as a form of morbid curiosity, but as an act of solidarity. The people in these stories aren't just statistics. They are mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters, fighting for dignity with a strength we can barely imagine. Their stories matter. The problems are complex, a toxic mix of history, politics, conflict, and climate change. There are no simple solutions, but awareness is the seed from which action grows. When we understand, we can talk. When we talk, we can demand more from our leaders, from our societies. We can support the organizations on the ground doing the hard, thankless work. Sharing this video, talking about it with a friend, simply holding these stories in your mind, it all helps to chip away at the ignorance and indifference that allows such suffering to persist in the shadows. If you found this video eye-opening, please consider liking it, leaving a comment with your thoughts, and sharing it to help spread the message. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter. The world is a big, complicated place, but it's the only one we've got. The more we try to understand the lives of others, the more connected we become, and in that connection, there is hope. Together, we can raise awareness and make a difference. Thanks for watching.